Welcome, everybody, to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. The trade deadline is passed. The Blue Jays figured prominently in it. They waited until I left to do all the trades, though, unfortunately. Fred Zinkie is with me today. Fred, Toronto's in the news again as well, not just for the trade deadline, but also because they did crazy things last night, getting 4 outs on a play and still giving up a run on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't fully digested it, but it might have to do with how low our dollar is right now. Like maybe we have to get 4 outs to equal 3 outs American. I am not sure if that's the currency exchange. I think about $4 Canadian's worth about $3 American right now. So maybe that's the new currency for the Blue Jays. They're just gonna have to get 4 outs every inning going forward. No, I was watching it live, and it was a peculiar situation, starting with the fact that they had the wrong amount of outs on the scoreboard. The listeners at home, that's what we thought listening at home, watching on TV was the first. We thought that's what the argument was that perhaps the Blue Jays were somehow being found at fault for there being the wrong amount of outs on the scoreboard, which we then found out later that Major League Baseball and a Major League Baseball employee controls the scoreboard, not an employee of the home team, which I
really? I didn't know that part.
Yeah, didn't know that part. Found that out later on during the broadcast that I don't know if that's, I'm assuming that's in every city. I'm assuming that's not just a distrust of Canadians. Like, can't find one of you guys to run the scoreboard, so we'll send someone up there. But so anyway, so we thought that was the problem.
Did you see the replay where as the guy's crossing home plate, they switch it back from 2 to 1?
Yes. Yeah. So some guy was like, "Oh no!" And
I'll cover my hair; they'll never notice.
Yeah. Nowadays, everyone noticed. My favorite part of the argument was it was good that the argument, by the way, like just didn't end up really factoring in the game. That Varland managed to get out of a jam in the 9th inning, and it just didn't matter. But nobody seemed to know what was going on except Max Scherzer. He seemed to have the whole thing figured out, which totally makes sense. I'm sure he's like, yeah, I saw this back in the 90s when I was in the minors, kind of thing. And everything. So, it's amazing that like the managers, the umpires, and I loved how the umpire came on the microphone eventually at Rogers Center and just said to the crowd, like, we're going back to New York for a rules check. Like, as in, like, I don't know. Nobody really knows what to do right now here. So it's really weird to think that a player would so blatantly lose track of the outs, forget to tag up, and then almost benefit from it.
Yeah,
exactly. I guess he would have scored anyways if he knew the outs, but yeah.
Well, after like it was like a 17-minute delay.
Yeah.
And then after all that, they go, okay, we finally got this sorted out now. It was one of those. And it was really funny to me to see how they went about doing that there.
Imagine the crowd reaction if that was Philadelphia or the Bronx or something like that, or Boston. Like, I can only imagine what the crowd reaction would have been.
Exactly, where there's places a lot more on the line. Yankee Stadium, I'm sure they'd take that in stride.
Yeah, I did feel like the crowd was in Toronto was all. I think maybe they were almost tired by the end of it. Like, they just waited them out after 17 minutes. They were like, "So we've come to a conclusion. It's not really good for you guys, but we are going to get to play baseball now." And they're just like, "Oh, okay," gentle boos, and then they move on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly there. So all in all, pretty crazy times there. Your Blue Jays, we were talking about this before the start of the pod. They threaded the needle at the trade deadline. They got Jose Soriano, but they traded away Kevin Gausman, Dalton Varsho. Are you happy with what they did?
Yeah, I am. All things considered, like it's very disappointing that they're in this position. Coming off the World Series Game 7, that they're just in a position of having to thread a needle or be sellers at the deadline. But you are where you are. And essentially they replaced Gausman with Soriano in the rotation, and that gets them years of control over Soriano. They adding Arrighetti potentially for next year. It's too bad Jameson Taillon, who they just picked up for nothing, lasted all of 2 starts, and he's went on the IL today. But whatever, you knew what you were getting. You didn't pay anything for him. So Brett Bateman's looked a little bit interesting since he's been up. I don't think he's for sure a future major league starter or anything. I do see like little shades of Stephen Kwan in him, just the way he swings the bat and plays center field and runs. Like I can see that a little bit, like no pop, but decent plate control and everything. I think they to sell, but then also walk out of the deadline with a 5-man rotation for the next season on paper anything can happen. I saw that with the Blue Jays this year with your projected rotation. But right now, you can name 5 Blue Jay starters, and it doesn't have to include Spencer Miles. He's
right.
on the outside. So that's not a bad position to be in August.
Yeah. Bittersweet to part with Kevin Gossman, but he was going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so it made sense to go ahead and do that there. But it was interesting how much he is loved there and how much he loved being there. You don't see too many players feel that way about Toronto that aren't native Canadians. So that was cool to see. I enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, that was a prominent story when you were there. There goes my Canadian A. There's a prominent story when you were visiting Canada.
The day after I left, that Saturday game, we were on the road. On the train, actually, to Niagara Falls at the time. And we went the night before, which was I got to see Dylan Cease. Was kind of one of his lesser games, only 7 strikeouts. We almost manifested a Vladdy home homer. It went off the left field wall. Dude, watching him run the bases, you can tell he's grinding through stuff. And, of course, he got 3 days off last week because of the hammy. I think the back is still a thing with him. So the sooner this season's over, the better.
So I think, and it hasn't been a story this year, so this is just me on my own, but I think Vladdy looks heavy this year. Like, we've seen him go through heavier. He's always a big guy, but we've seen him go through heavier phases and light phases. And there was one a few years ago that was a heavier phase. It was well documented. And then he got in shape. Like, I don't know. This is just me watching Blue Jays. I feel like he looks heavy this year. And I don't know if the story will ever come out, but there's just part of me that wonders if, like, off the big World Series and I don't know if he was maybe just kind of satisfied last offseason and didn't grind as hard. I don't know. But to me, he looks a little heavy. And then you wonder, like, hamstrings, backs. I don't know if you're carrying extra weight and he's already a big guy and you're trying to play 162 games. And I don't know. I'd be interested to know if just behind closed doors, if there's going to be a mission to have him shed some weight and be in better shape when they start next season.
I think you might be right about that a little bit. And he was never he's always never a slender guy to begin with. But as you get older, I've found this out. You kind of put on a little weight. You kind of get a little bigger. Takes a little more effort to be in shape there. So it goes. All right, let's talk about the news. There wasn't a lot of news on the docket there. I'm going to start off with the comment from Papa J asking about Cam Smith. Homer yesterday, heating up a little bit there. I know you didn't throw this on the outline, so I'm throwing you a curveball right off the top here. Picked him up in one league. I picked him up in a league where I needed some power. I'm benching Esmeralyn Valdez, the magician. Just because. He's making that batting average disappear with every single strikeout there. But Cam Smith, I've made the comparison to Jordan Walker before. I'll make it again. Young player, got up before he was really truly ready. Switched positions when he got up. Struggled badly last year. Looks like he's kind of getting it. The bat speed is crazy good. The hard hit rate's rising. Had a big night last night with a homer and a game tying hit in the 9th inning down to the last strike.
Actually, I just put Cam Smith in a future article. So even off the cuff, I can, talk about Cam Smith, no problem. He is someone this year who his expected stats aren't amazing, but they've been notably better than his actual stats all season. And so he is someone where you could have said at any point in time, like, he's been unlucky, just, give him some time. He doesn't even have to play better. He should just have better luck. And then that should, like, an XBA of 246. Well, if Cam Smith's batting 246, like, he'd be in a lot more lineups. You're right. The bat speed is crazy good. The barrel rate is good. Strikeout rate's fine. Walk rate's fine. They're not special, but they're average. Maybe a little below average, but close enough. I agree. I think there's potential in Cam Smith for sure. Depending on how the second half goes, I think he could end up being like a bit of a fantasy industry darling for next season's drafts where, like Cam Smith's numbers this year, like, he's kind of on pace to be about 65 runs, 65 runs and 60 RBI, nothing special. Maybe he's about a 2012 guy, something like that. I could see people kind of dreaming on him, looking at the raw data, the expected stats into that, and then dreaming on him taking a big leap next year. And maybe I'll be one of those people, but for sure, I think he's someone, if he's sitting around on a waiver wire, I think he's someone who's definitely worth taking a long look at and probably adding.
Now has 16 homers and 10 stolen bases on the season there. Yeah, you can see that, that improvement. Age 23 season. I like it. Joe is asking, would you drop Vladdy for Cam Smith?
Maybe
the fact that we have to ask that question tells you where we're at with both of those players in terms of their arcs.
Like Vladdy is still like, even with the Blue Jays on a little bit of a better run right now, that better run is have nothing to do with Vladdy.
No,
like he's continuing to hit the ball into the ground. If you wanted to look at expected stats, Vladdy's expected batting average is about 35 points higher, but his expected slug is lower. His barrel rate's like barely half of Cam Smith's. They have the same average exit velocity. I would guess that if it's a league where I'm actually thinking about dropping Vladdy, I can probably do better than Cam Smith on the waiver wire. That would be my guess. If it's a league where Cam Smith's my best waiver wire option, I probably have someone I could drop before I would drop Vladdy. But it's actually not crazy. In Yahoo leagues, I've been banging the drum for 6 weeks or so, saying like look at who's on the waiver wire at first base, and you probably should just drop Vladdy.
It's amazing. Just amazing. And there's a shutdown chance here too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the point in favor. I'd say if Cam Smith's your best option, I'd still do it. And another best option will come along. We just saw comments commented in the chat that Zach Veen just got the call. I don't know if Zach Veen's better, but
that's really interesting. Zach Veen, I just wrote about him for an article that came out today.
You anticipated all of our needs here, Fred. Let's talk some Zach Veen.
I did not. So that news is really fresh off the presses because I was looking right before we started recording for any. So Zach Veen is just having like a spectacular season in the PCL. And I know the PCL is like a hitter-friendly place, but even within a hitter-friendly place, like if you're the most hitter-friendly guy, so he's first in the PCL in OPS, second in homers, second in RBIs, fourth in runs. Just pulled up today's Yahoo article to grab that data. So he's been the best hitter in the PCL this season. I'm not sure where Zach Veen fits in. Like I haven't seen the transaction. So unless the Rockies have someone prominent going on the IL, that would be the way that. But other than that, Mickey Moniak kind of rotates between left field and DH. Mm-hmm. Cole Carrig needs to play, like assuming he's going to keep playing center, and not he does play a little shortstop. So but assuming Tovar is going to keep playing because they have a lot of money tied up in him. I don't know. Maybe Jordan Beck doesn't play, and maybe that's how he gets into the outfield. If Zach Veen's playing, then I would pick him up. And then the question is if I had Vladdy, would I drop Vladdy for Zach Veen? I guess I'd want to at least read an article on like
I'm looking to confirm this news, by the way, too.
Okay.
Because I
got a Denver Post article right here. So we're confirmed.
All right.
That he's coming up. So I just would have to see, maybe just read a little more into. We haven't seen. Oh, they designated Edouard Julien for assignment.
Oh,
that doesn't
what a drop. Yeah.
Like that helps him like Zach. That's fine for Zach Veen, but it's not. He still could be in a bit of a log jam. I do back to the Vladdy thought, like it is the thought of streaming the position. Like we've talked about that before, that just the thought, I didn't mention Jake McCarthy when I was talking about outfielders. There's another one like that just needs to play every day. So, but the thought with Vladdy would be you're giving up on Vladdy, you're dropping him for whoever the best guy on your waiver wire is, and you're just streaming that roster spot until you run into someone. Like it's the only way to eventually run into, you know what I mean? Like a Cole Carrig or a Jake McCarthy at one point was on waivers in a lot of leagues. Like you have to create a roster spot so you can eventually run into someone who's having a really good year. As Merlin Valdez, who now has gone cold, but for a while was carrying your team. So Heriberto Hernandez, like we've seen lots of these guys in the last few weeks. So that would be the thought on Vladdy. It's just that you're dropping him to just open the spot, and you're going to try to, and you're just thinking ahead, like that you just don't think Vladdy's going to help you down the stretch or in the fantasy playoffs if it's a head-to-head league.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We have more breaking news. Trey Yesavage having surgery for a meniscus tear in his knee.
Yeah, I saw that. They were talking yesterday that They were almost like, it was almost like the Blue Jays were slowly breaking it to the fan base yesterday. Like they were like, it's a meniscus injury. He may need surgery. It's like when you tell your kids, like, we may be going to visit grandma this weekend or something like that. And like, full well, you're going to visit grandma this weekend and it's a long car ride and they're not going to want to do it, but you're just like slowly breaking it to them. Like, it's like they were slowly telling the fan base. Like,
man, throwing your in-laws under the bus. Or are they your parents? I don't know. But...
Well, say they're mine because I don't need to be in trouble with my in-laws.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah, they it's like they were slowly breaking into the fan base yesterday. But yeah, that'll end his season. The Blue Jays, as we discussed, just built a rotation for 2027. So I haven't seen the timeline on it, but hopefully he's able to be back for spring training. I can't remember the timeline on a meniscus surgery, like if that's like a 6 month and then you're back, or if it's longer than that. I feel like it wouldn't be longer than that off the top of my head, but yeah.
Low key, pretty disappointing season for Yesavage too, while we're at it, especially given if you drafted early before the Jays initially shut him down in spring training. Yeah. You probably paid a pretty decent price for Yesavage.
Yeah. He pitched fine. Like he didn't hurt you. 3.65 ERA, 1 whip. 91 strikeouts, but for sure. So something we're going to talk about in a bit when we talk about some pitching decisions this past year is it's also about the pocket Yesavage was in, because there was a time in drafts where you were choosing between Yesavage and Cam Schlittler and Jacob Mizorowski and Chase Burns.
Right.
Like, he was kind of in that tier. Now,
the opportunity cost for sure.
I felt like he quickly kind of moved to the back end of that tier. So maybe you didn't have the option. I know I have a couple Yesavage shares. Oh, one for sure, where before he was hurt, but I think all of those names were off the board, I think. And then he was just the last guy or one of the last guys left in that. Got kind of, there was that group of like round like 7, 8, 9 talented pitchers with a year or less than a year of major league experience. And he was kind of in that group, and the separation on that group, Emmett Sheehan, that's the other guy we'll talk about later. Like the separation in that group is immense.
Oh, I just cut you, Emmett Sheehan, and
like the gap between Jacob Mizorowski and Emmett Sheehan.
Oh,
who were going
so cruel.
Yeah, who were going so and had very similar profile as far as like really talented, just very inexperienced.
Yep.
Yeah.
Devin Williams. The Monday IL moved. Devin Williams and Nathan Eovaldi both on the IL. Shoulder fatigue for Williams. Currently sits at 16 saves, a 4.66 ERA, a 1.66 WHIP. Like the rest of the Mets, total disaster this year.
Yeah, and this one, looking back on draft season, I guess if you pick Devin Williams, I have no Devin Williams shares this year, but I did have him ranked fairly competitively. If you picked him, I guess you knew what you were getting into. You had to know what you were getting into. He failed as the Yankees closer multiple times last season.
That's true.
So you were kind of saying, no, I like the underlying numbers that say he's better than he showed when he was on the Yankees and all the success in Milwaukee. There's another guy, Freddie Peralta style, left Milwaukee, fell apart. So you were saying, I think if I uttered this phrase during draft season, I think the Mets will fix them. That might have made me not. Maybe I shouldn't work in this industry. I'm not to say the Mets aren't terrible with their pitchers, I don't think, but they're not known as savants or anything. So
ask anybody that had Freddie Peralta this year. They might think that they're pretty terrible with their pitchers.
True. That's yes, absolutely. So there's two guys though who left the Brewers immediately, fell apart. Williams didn't bounce back. Again, something else we'll talk about a little bit later, but there were 8 closers who went 2, 4, 6. 8 closers who went in the same range as the top 15 starters in the main event. All of them are worth $12 or more so far this year, except Devin Williams -2 and Edwin Diaz -18. The Edwin Diaz is just bad injury luck. So really,
and bad performance though too.
Don't you feel like the performance is kind of tied to the injury?
It might be, but maybe. Let's face it, he's had some volatility in the past. Also with the Mets, by the way. So I don't know.
I don't know. He had thrown, for example, taking out the COVID season, he had thrown 50 innings every season of his career, and then this year he's going to throw 20.
Yeah, performance volatility though. I mean, there were bits and pieces.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the Mets where he was all over the map. Diaz did look good last night, by the way, in getting the save against the Royals. So
he might end up being more valuable than Williams by the time the season's over. Like if Diaz just has a solid final 6 weeks here, 6 or 7 weeks, right? But the also when you talk about opportunity costs, like we were talking about with Yesavage and Emmett Sheehan, but those who picked Devin Williams ADP was immediately before David Bednar or Aroldis Chapman. So 2 guys who are worth $22 and $16 respectively so far. So if you picked him over those 2 out of that tier, like that it's not only like you got a failed closer, but you were right there to click on just someone who had an ADP like 2 picks later, and you could have got a good.
We didn't have that with Nathan Eovaldi. Bad timing too with the Rangers as the last wild card in the American League.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and that's who my Jays are chasing right now. Every night I see how the Jays do, and I watch how the Jays do, and then I see how Texas does now immediately. I used to be checking Cleveland, now I'm checking Texas. So this is a big blow for them, even though Eovaldi wasn't having an awesome season, but just guys who can make consistent starts. He had 10 wins. So Eovaldi, though, I think you didn't get what you paid for. If he doesn't come back, you didn't really get what you paid for from an innings because it's an elbow. Like, I don't know if Eovaldi's come back. From an innings perspective, you got what you paid for. 132 and 2/3 innings is 2 and 2/3 innings more than last season. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of where he's at. Like 2 years ago, he had 29 starts, but if you take it that season, like most of his recent seasons are 20 to 25 starts. And given that he's 36, like I think from an innings and strikeouts perspective, you got what you paid for. From a ratios perspective, they're a little higher than you had hoped.
Indeed. Let's talk a little Rays and A's last night. I had Jacob Lopez going in some leagues, feeling pretty good about it there. Hey, looks like, and I'm still feeling pretty good about it because he pitched well. Yep. But man, oh man, did that lead disappear in a hurry.
So the A's bullpen, the Athletics bullpen. Yep. I know Scott mentions it on Twitter often, which keeps me up to date on how it's going. In case I'll see those tweets maybe in the morning if I'm asleep by the time the A's hit bullpen time. But it was a factor when I was thinking about Jacob Lopez. It was also a factor when I was thinking about, and I got burned on this a little bit. I've been whipsawed a bit by Gage Jump in the last little while.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like I fully bought into him, and then I absorbed felt like maybe 3 or 4 like bad starts, and then I was like, never mind. And then
you missed out on the Red Sox start on Saturday there. Oh, trust me, I know that. I know the experience fully. Brutal.
Exactly. But and that one he ended up getting the win. But one of my thoughts when I kind of hoping the A's bullpen, the Athletics bullpen, like backs him up, and last night 10-6 loss after he pitched 7 innings at 2-run ball.
Yep. Of course. And it was over immediately in the 8th inning. The first 6 hit, I think the first 6, maybe 7 batters all reached for the Rays. You could just tell right away. There was like, okay, walk, the hit, 3-run homer. Uh-oh, what's going on here? Boom, boom, boom. It just was so fast. You're just like, oh, it's coming too. You can just feel it coming there.
And very indicative of how the Rays season has gone. I predicted their downfall, which has definitely not happened. Because I said that they're ahead of their skis on all their expected stats. I predicted their downfall in the second half. Well, now they've won 7 in a row. And it's just like everything seems to kind of just work. This just seems like a year where everything just keeps clicking for the Rays. They have a worse run differential than the Yankees, worse run differential than Boston. They're 6 ahead of the Yankees, 8 ahead of Boston. It just seems like a year where everything's clicking for the A's. And so there's another one where you're just like, oh, we got dominated for 7 innings. Oh, we'll just go out and, score like crazy in the 8th and win this game anyways.
Yeah, but it was like Seth Johnston and like Jose Suarez. Yeah. And it just, where were the good relievers? Oh, wait, that's
there aren't any.
Begging the question. So there is that. Andrew Painter had a good start yesterday. So interesting note there. We were talking about him on the Veen show yesterday, Nick Whalen and I, and the strikeout prop was only 3.5. And the thing is, like, Painter had improved in his last 5 starts. His swing and strike rate had jumped up to over 13%. However, the strikeout rate did not follow along with that. It was still around 19%. His xFIP in those 5 starts was like 664. So this is like, which leading indicator did you want to buy into there? Turns out the swing strike rate was right. that there was some strikeout upside, some good fortune upside. He pitched very well against the Cardinals.
He did. Before I picked a topic for today, one of the topics I thought about and kind of looked into was actually just kind of like some like lineup type stats that maybe people would want to know when picking and then I ended up picking a different topic for today. And, but it was some lineup stats that people may just, or trends with teams that people may want to know as they pick pitchers and matchups, down the stretch. And one of them was, and it worked right into Andrew Painter's favor. The Cardinals are 29th in OP. That yesterday's game was in St. Louis. The Cardinals are 29th in team OPS at home.
Really?
And since like June 1st, I believe they're last like with a bullet. And they're also bottom. They're 25th in OPS against right-handers. And again, since June 1st, I think maybe even worse than that. That's so those numbers are full season. So anyways, Anyway, actually, it was the home stat that I was thinking about. Sorry, with Painter, and I was like, yeah, the Cardinals are so bad at home. The right-handed thing mattered, but the home stat, I was like, wow, the Cardinals are that bad, like worse than they were. I believe they were worse since June 1st, the worst team with a bullet, like worse than the Blue Jays at home, worse than the Mariners at home. I think the Mariners might have been second worst, something like that. Anyways, I was just kind of doing some research for this potting in case that was a direction I wanted to go in for a topic. And so anyways, it all stemmed into start Andrew Painter yesterday in a 2-start week, and then cross your fingers that the second start against the Twins is okay.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that the Phillies stuck with Painter at the trade deadline. They didn't trade for another starter. They weren't they weren't there for Gossman. They weren't there for some of the other starters.
How about even just like Shane Bieber, who maybe the Blue Jays would have just given away?
Yeah,
at the or like a small return for him. I mentioned that I think maybe even with Todd on the podcast that they stuck with Painter, and just from my local market, Scherzer or Bieber were probably available for a very small return. So yeah, maybe, I don't know. I guess they maybe think that they can at least get out of Painter what they would have got out of those guys, like a 4.5 ERA, a 5 ERA. That's all those guys were going to give them anyways.
All right, got a couple quick news notes. I'm going to skip a couple on the outline just to keep this rolling. Adley Rutschman, though, is making his Red Sox debut today.
Yeah, so, like everything's going the Red Sox way. Now they got another, key piece for that lineup. He'll be a major upgrade offensively over the catchers they've had, over Connor Wong and Jake Rogers.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where they slot Adley into the lineup. Just watching the Red Sox lineup, like for a team that's been so incredibly hot, when you're watching them, like and your favorite teams playing them, like the lineup isn't scary. There's
100% agree. And I thought the same thing when I was there on last Thursday, the 13 inning game that was bonkers. But I looked at that lineup and I'm like,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like I just watched the Blue Jays play the Phillies on the weekend, and I was like, oh gosh, here comes Schwarber. Oh, Trey Turner. Like, and the Jays and they were close games, they would get into these late inning jams, and I'd be like, oh no, now it's Bryce Harper. Oh great, they need a single, and Luis rises up. And then like if you could run that gauntlet, then then you hit Alec Boehm, and it started to land Brandon Marsh and stuff, and it started to lighten up. When you play the Red Sox, like Wilyer Abreu, Wilson Contreras, like throughout that close game yesterday, I just always felt like I was like, okay, we get this guy out. We get this guy out.
Yeah.
Like when Varland gave up the leadoff double to Jarren Duran, I was like, okay, well, we can Varland can get a couple guys out here and get out of that. And he did. And I don't know. It is a lineup that I think if it's going to succeed, it's going to succeed by just being really deep and really long, and just kind of everybody contributes. They do have a vibe to me a little bit like last year's Blue Jays, where just everybody's playing like last year in the second half, just like Springer started playing the best we've seen him in his whole time in Toronto, and Clement was playing over his head, and Lucas would come up with big hits, and like it wasn't Vladdy carrying the team. Vladdy was actually just playing fine. It was like everybody, Kirk was playing like at his best. Yep. And that feels like the Red Sox, were just Contreras having a good season. Abreu's hitting timely homers. Rafael has been really contributing, but there's definitely room for this lineup to be better, but it won't be better. Like there's no, like the Yankees, there's no Aaron Judge coming. Like it's going to be better just by being longer.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a key addition for them.
Yeah, agreed. Last one for me is Kyle Stowers going on the IL. I want just to point that out just because, Stowers hasn't had a good year. But Griffin Conine, I pay attention to what he's been doing for the Marlins right now. I know he's 28. He's not like a massive, huge prospect. This might be as good as it gets. But what he's doing right now is really good. He's got like an OPS over 850 now, doing a lot of good things for the Marlins.
Absolutely. And Griffin Conine batting third in tonight's lineup. So if he sticks around there, strikes out a lot, but hits the ball hard. 15.8% barrel rate. All of his expected stats pretty much just line up with his actual numbers. So yeah, he could be someone who, like, 12 homers and 166 plate appearances is pretty darn good. So he's someone where if he could play regularly the rest of the way, like, could be really valuable to people who need power.
Indeed. This podcast is brought to you by good friends over at Circa. Circa Million 8 and Circa Survivor are going big for the 2026 football season with $30 million in guaranteed prizes.
Race. It's not going to matter if Edwin Diaz comes back and gets you 10 saves the rest of the way, if he's already kind of been a big part of burying you. So I think we're already late enough in the year. This is something you could do again at the end of the season where you could look at and again, it's a 1-year sample, but I wanted to look at where were the good pockets of pitchers this year. What would have been an optimal way to draft pitchers and build your staff? Because I always have kind of said that drafting is all about where you pick your pitchers. You can always pick a hitter. There's endless supply of hitters. They get worse as the draft goes on. You have to draft a bunch of them, but you have to put some value in them for sure. But like, you kind of have to decide, am I going to get an ace in round 1 or 2, or am I going to wait and maybe double tap aces in round 4 and 5? Am I going to have an elite closer, or am I going to wait and maybe grab a couple closers back to back and around round 10? Like, it's all in those decisions. And once you figure out how you want to do that, you can just draft hitters, the highest hitter on your list in all the other rounds, and try to pick the right one. So I kind of wanted to look back at, where were the smart places to get pitchers this year? Because I don't know, it's at least worth knowing when we go into next year's draft season.
Right. All right. So how did we define our tiers?
Okay. Where the good pockets were and where the bad pockets were.
So I think the inclination for a lot of people is where the aces, they weren't worth it this year. I had Garrett Crochet. He was a disaster. I have Paul Skubal. He's super Paul Skubal. Paul Skeens, Tarek Skubal. I know that, folks. Man, what a day. I have Paul Skeens. It's been terrible. No, first of all, it hasn't been that terrible if you look at his overall numbers, but there's more to this aces tier than the big three.
Oh, absolutely. And in the end, picking a top 10 starter this year was a pretty good idea. If you didn't get Crochet, which I got in a lot of places, and that really hurt me. Yeah. Hunter Brown was disappointing. Max Fried's been disappointing. Brian Woo's been disappointing. But within that, like you said, Skeens has been not great, but like he's $13 so far. We'll see how the rest of it goes. Maybe he can push that number up close to 20. Skubal is at 16. Was at 16 going into last night. So I did this data to just make it clean at the start of this week. Skubal could push that number up over 20, but Christopher Sanchez, Yamamoto, Sale, 27, 28, 28, 3 of the best starters this year. Logan Gilbert's been good at 18. So the average from the top 10 starters was $11.4. This is all on the RotoWire earned auction value calculator. So okay. That's been the best pocket on average so far this year. So if you're going to group them by groups of 10, that's the most valuable group. It should be the most valuable group. Right. It's the group you spent the most on, but it has been the most valuable group. So actually grabbing it this year, if I even had parsed it even more, the top 6, or if I wanted to go to top 8 with Logan Gilbert, that's the best group. Like, it's 9 and 10, Hunter Brown and Max Fried that dragged that group down. The top 6 or top 8. So if you took a starter in the first 2 rounds, you probably got at least a pretty good pitcher. As long as you miss Garrett Crochet, you got a pretty good pitcher.
Yep, exactly. If you push Cole Reagans up to the end of the second round, well, that's on you too. But and actually, and more often than not, he didn't go that high. He was more like the 3-4 turn is where he was going more often. Unfortunately, he was a disaster there. And tier 2 has its share of bogeys. There's one other in tier 1. End of tier 1, beginning of tier 2 is Freddie Peralta. He and Cole Reagans deserve some of our scoring.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And if when I further divided it, so that next group of 10, so SP's 11 to 20. So that's kind of I waited on ace. I decided to start with 3 hitters, or I decided to start with 2 hitters and a closer. Now I'm going to grab a couple guys back to back, or or close to back to back, who have ace potential.
Mm-hmm.
That group largely stinks this year. Dylan Cease has been awesome, $25. Jesus Luzardo has been really great, $19. Everyone else, no. Cole Reagans and Freddie Peralta, really, really bad. But Jacob deGrom's been underwhelming. Logan Webb's been underwhelming. George Kirby has been disappointing. Yuri Perez, Kyle Bradish, Joe Ryan, all single-digit dollar values. So that group, this past year at least, was not a great group to invest in. It was smarter. It was smarter to either pay up and get a pitcher in those first 2.5 rounds, or just wait.
Yep. Now, is that an enduring thing?
That would be a longer study. Like, go back and look at some other groups and see. I think no. I think other seasons we've seen guys emerge from round 5 or 6. 4, 5,
I was just going to
6.
say, are we singularly bad about identifying pitchers 11 through 20, or are they that volatile?
Or is it?
I don't think so.
Or are we? Or are we? What I thought about a little bit, or a bit with some of these guys, some of them especially, I can see, like, are we overlooking the flaws because we just feel like it's time to draft a pitcher? So Yuri Perez, Kyle Bradish, like, we're Jacob deGrom and how old he is. Like, were we cut Freddie Peralta leaving Milwaukee? Like, were we cut Cole Reagans and how much time he missed the previous year? Like, were we overlooking like obvious red flags just because we were like, oh my gosh, it's round 4 and I don't have a starter. I got to get a starter.
Okay, I missed out on the true aces. I better catch up.
I better get one. Where in reality, we might have been better to just say, well, I might as well just draft a couple more hitters because there's no better return on investment on these guys as there is to just wait 2 or 3 more rounds.
I'm living proof of that in the main event. And, I kind of panicked and the thing is, I already had Christopher Sanchez. I kind of choked though. I passed on Aroldis Chapman and took Freddie Peralta instead in the fourth round, near the beginning of the 4th round in the main event. Huge cataclysmic fail. I even with me getting Raisel Iglesias the next round, who's been just fine. The problem is I just took a 4th round pick and lit it on fire. I could have taken, there's plenty of bats I could have taken there instead. And now I have to punish myself and go look to see exactly which bats I could have taken. I'm praying it's not James Wood, current IL trip notwithstanding.
Yeah.
I mean,
and while you're looking that up, I can say, like, if you didn't pick Peralta, if you'd picked Luzardo, you would feel differently. But if you just didn't like Luzardo and you had just picked one of the next guys based on ADP, you would have ended up with a pitcher who was worth less than $5, like Kirby, Perez, Bradish. Those were the next ones to go. If one of them, I don't know who was next on your list, and we won't really remember now, but that group, like, you wouldn't have done any better. You would have done better, than Peralta, but you wouldn't have done as well as you were hoping. Again, like I wonder sometimes if we just in round 4 or 5, we're like, well, I got to get starter. So you're just like, okay, next highest guy on my list is Yuri Perez. I'll take him. Not really thinking, like, is Yuri Perez really any safer or better of a pitcher than the guys going 3 or 4 rounds later?
Okay, so here's who went after my pick in the 4th round. Meanwhile, Brent Rooker right before, by the way, so I dodged that one. But Jesus Luzardo would have been just fine.
Yeah.
George Kirby, kind of a disaster.
Yeah,
Aroldis Chapman, who I liked a lot, would have been great. Kettle Marte, just fine.
Yeah.
Shane Langeliers hurt now, but very productive until he got hurt.
Yeah.
Daniel Palencia got pushed up. That didn't work out.
No.
Logan Webb didn't work out. Austin Riley hasn't worked out. Little signs of life now. James Wood. James Wood, Dylan Cease. 4th and 3rd to last picks of the 4th round in that league. Michael Garcia, unmitigated disaster. Bryce Terang, pretty good. That ends the 4th round.
Yeah,
I mean, there were good options. There were good choices there.
The massive gap between, like, James Wood's on his own level with how valuable he's been this year, but the massive gap between guys like Cease, Terang, and then even like Luzardo, and then the bad guys from the ones that you mentioned. Peralta leading the way, but not the only one by any stretch. That's what a lot of rounds do look like that for sure. Yeah.
Usually not that early. Michael Garcia might have been the worst of the round, but Cole Reagans also in the start of that round. There's a lot of bogeys all over the place. That's the thing
Yeah.
I'm learning here.
Yeah.
Everybody makes, and that's the thing about baseball fantasy leagues is everybody's going to make a mistake. There's very rarely that perfect draft. Even your main event winners, overall main event winners, have some mistakes in there.
Oh, absolutely. Even for anyone listening, like go back when you win a league this year and look at your draft and you'll be like, man, that draft is really bad. How did I win the league? You know, you don't have to be, you won't be a perfect drafter or even close to it, right? Like if you hit on, a couple James Woods, that can mask a lot of mistakes, but it's the grind of all the free agent moves and things like that. It's not usually a perfect draft or a close to perfect draft that leads you to a championship.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's talk about the next pocket of pitchers.
Yeah, so this is the pocket here. So this is the second most valuable pocket of the ones I looked at. Now it's heavily influenced by Cam Schlittler, $35, Jacob Misiorowski, $45. So those two. That being said, we've got a $21 Zach Wheeler, and we've even got a $12 Nolan McLean, who was kind of polarizing during draft season. Like $12, not bad. Like $12, for example, would put him third in the preceding tier of that SP 11 to 20. That would put him only behind Cease and Luzardo. So, like Wheeler would have been second in that preceding tier. So Schlittler and Misiorowski drive up the average value.
Sure.
So the average value was $4 for the preceding groups, SP 11 to 20, and this group 21 to 30 is $8. Remember, the first group was 11. So Nathan Eovaldi, even at $7, like we talked about earlier, like a little disappointing. Gosman's at -1, not great. Framber Valdez at -5, not great. But at least you got them a little later than the guy who took George Kirby. Like at least you know what I mean? Like at least they're worth a few dollars less than Kyle Bradish and George Kirby, but not much. So yeah, this group this year was just massive feast or famine. Emmett Sheehan was in the group. Nick Pivetta was in the group. But massive, like this was where some people won their league. Like, and we'll see a little bit when we go into the next tier too. But Schlittler and Misiorowski, are league winning guys.
One guy in our league had both Schlittler and Misiorowski. Team 11 got him in the 7th and 9th rounds, respectively. Also has Cade Smith, which was a big win. Also, but he took 6 pitchers in the first 9 rounds.
He took the right ones, or at least
some of the right ones, some of the wrong ones. Also took Fried, Kirby, and Eovaldi. So 50-50. I'll take that hit rate, though, by the way.
Yeah, and Fried, Kirby, and Eovaldi are not Cole Reagans and not Freddie Peralta. Like they're all plus players, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Also has CJ Abrams on this team. So that's pretty good.
Okay. Too. He sounds like, I don't know how he's done since then, but that's not a bad
fourth place
start
in the league overall, but crushing the pitching points. Obviously,
yeah,
69 hitting points for Team Hughes.
Wow.
Hughes, Pedersen, Maine. Michael Hughes, John Pedersen did well at the pitching there. That's for sure. And had CJ Abrams and with the 6th round CJ Abrams, 2 picks after I took Freddie Freeman, who is not doing as well as CJ Abrams. That pick was there available, and I hadn't taken a shortstop either there. So it feels even worse. But hey, I got Corey Seager around later, so I didn't need CJ Abrams. Oh God, just threw up in my mouth again.
Freddie Freeman. I mean, before we throw too much at Freddie Freeman, like he's hitting 308.
Fine.
He's going to get to about 20 homers. Like he's on the low end of what you were hoping for. Like he's probably going to be around like 75 to 80 runs in RBI. It's underwhelming for sure.
Yeah, batting average matters.
Absolutely.
Category, but you need other things there too, especially if you're not getting stolen bases out of not so fast Freddie. All right, next tier of pitchers.
Yeah, so the good values continue into this SP 31 to 40, and this group doesn't have the benefit of Schlittler and Misiorowski. Misiorowski, by the way, is ridiculous. Like his $45 before we leave that is like is $10 more than the next guy. Like that is insane. Anyways. 31 to 40, just so many really nice values. Like Sonny Gray, $18, Chase Burns, 23, Drew Rasmussen, 25, Shota Imanaga, 11, Sandy Alcantara, 16, even Michael King at 8. At that point in the draft, like that's pretty solid value. It's got a couple busts in there, like Ryan Pepio never made it to opening day. Nick Lodolo has been basically hurt all season. They're kind of this tier's version of Peralta and Reagans. Like it's like every tier's got a couple of Sheehan and Pivetta. Like it's like every tier has got a couple of these guys, but this SP 31 to 40, like we're looking at double digit value for 5 of the pitchers. If I expand it to $8, 6 of the pitchers, even Trevor Rogers, like -1, like it's not great, but again, at this point when we're talking about SP 39, like it's not killing you.
Right.
So this group was worth $6. This group was worth from 31 to 40 was worth more than SP 11 to 20 on average. And again, it doesn't have a Mizorowski carrying it, as no one worth more than 25. It's just got a really solid group. Drafters would have been better if they were just like you said, like I've got to get another starter, so I'm just going to go ahead and take George Kirby or Kyle Bradish. They would have been better to just take another hitter and just wait and say, I'll try Drew Rasmussen, I'll try Michael King, I'll try Shota Imanaga. They would have done just as well. I
talked before the draft that I like that tier, and yeah, I got it in other leagues. I got from that tier. In this league, I got Nick Lodolo, Shane Baz at the end of it. I done messed up Aaron there. I just messed up a lot of different places there. All right, next tier.
The SP 41 to 50 is by far the worst tier. It's actually worth -$3. It has Gavin Williams, who's been great, $23. It's got Shane McClanahan, who's been okay, $8. He's working his way back. Robbie Ray's been worth $6. He's just kind of like Robbie Ray in his way through the season, like mid pack ratios, but he gets some wins, some strikeouts. Everyone else just negatives. Bubba Chandler, bad. Spencer Strider, even worse. Tatsuya Mai, really bad. Shane Baz hasn't been good. Mackenzie Gore is doing his Mackenzie Gore thing where he gets you some strikeouts and not much else. Cade Horton, Cabrera, there's 2 Cubs back to back and it just totally didn't pan out. Hence the Cubs need to trade for pitchers at the deadline. But this group was bad. So this at least this year, this was when the talent, I guess, really fell off at pitcher. So it's this group, in hindsight, you would have been best off to grab an ace and then wait till about round 8 and then take a couple more pitchers and then maybe just chill out for a while and you know what I mean? And then maybe jump back in around, like once we were kind of past this tier when the prices are just cheap and you're in round 14 or 15 and grab a few more there because you're kind of throwing darts at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the question again, just like we asked earlier, is this actionable? Is this something we could count on for future years? And I'm not sure that we have an answer to that.
If I was going to say anything about this tier, like think about the wish casting as I name these guys.
Yep.
Bubba Chandler, like massive control problems, but somehow I'll take him in round 10. He's going to figure it all out. Spencer Strider, coming off an injury, velocity's down. Everyone's talking about it, but I'm going to take him anyways. Mackenzie Gore has just been a whip killer his whole career, but just because he's in a new park and on a new team, it's going to figure itself out. Shane Baz was really bad last year. He's leaving a team that's really good at developing pitchers, going to a team that's not good at developing pitchers, but this is going to make him better. Tatsuya Mai just showed up, but I think he's good, even though no one wanted to give him a really big contract in free agency. Cade Horton, that one's an injury one. I don't know if he might have been fine. Like that one, I'm not sure. He was really good down the stretch last year. That was the wish casting. And then Cabrera, same thing. Like he never was really, he was a little better last year for sure. And he's been hurt a lot. And maybe that one's just a bad luck, but I feel like there's a fair amount of wish casting. If I go up a tier, like, I don't know. I feel like we knew like Mizorowski, Burns, those guys are super talented and looked great last, like, but really
they're like
talented.
Just a round difference though. That's the funny thing.
Right.
And what you said about like Bubba Chandler, the same applies to Gavin Williams, but it worked. Gavin Williams did cut down his walks.
He did.
And maintained his strikeouts. So
and
it can happen.
And I'll admit that in the previous tier, there was wish casting with Imanaga and Alcantara, like for sure. Like Alcantara, right, was like a mess most of last season, and same with Imanaga. So like I get it. There is wish casting once you get at this point in the draft. And I did pick cutoffs, not random cutoffs, like just, mathematical cutoffs. But I don't know. There just seemed this year to be a tier around round 7, 8, 9 of guys who just like even Kevin Gausman, like there's no wish casting this year with Kevin Gausman. They're just like, this guy's kind of like, and he hasn't had a great year, but you're like, yeah, he's been a really good pitcher for several years. Sonny Gray, same thing. Like, Drew Rasmussen, it was more just how much length were they going to let him have?
Yeah, but
like if they didn't let him have the length, maybe he would be an $18 pitcher right now instead of 25. But there's always wish casting with the injuries with pitchers, but the and even going to Zach Wheeler, obviously massive wish casting, and it worked out. So you are rolling the dice, but at least you're rolling the dice with a later pick that's less valuable than when you were rolling the dice on Yuri Perez or Kyle Bradish.
Yeah, indeed. Fred, I'm going to table the closer discussion on the closer pockets until next week, just because I want to give it appropriate length. So we'll cut it off here, talking about the starting pitchers there. Final conclusions. Anything after this, it's more of a dart throw anyhow. That's why we didn't go really too deep into this there. Do you have general strategies, like how many starting pitchers you want to take, say in a 15-team league? Do you want to populate your bench with a bunch of these wild cards?
Yeah, I think that's not a bad strategy. Like you said, we'll talk about the closers next week, but looking back, if you were to go off this data, you would say, get a pitcher in the first 2 rounds, and we'll talk next week, but get a really good closer and then wait a bit. And then, and then maybe grab some pitchers in round 7, 8, 9, or 8, 9, 10, play the odds that maybe you can find a breakout. You're going to get a bust in there, but maybe you'll get a breakout in there too. And maybe that's how you build your first closer and your top 3 or 4 starters.
All right. Very good. That is going to wrap up today's podcast. Coming up tomorrow, James Anderson with the Prospect Pod. As always, make sure to subscribe to the RotoWire YouTube channel for baseball podcasts. If you do the live stream with us here, it's now a very special baseball only channel. As of course, if you're listening on podcast, wherever you get your podcast, we thank you for that as well. Or if you're streaming with us on Twitter or Facebook. That's going to wrap it up. Big thanks to Circa for sponsoring us. Make sure to check out all our fantasy football coverage over at rotowire.com. Use promo code YouTube to get 15% off any RotoWire subscription. Thank you for listening to RotoWire. Fred and I thank you. Have a great day.